sorry.
You were like a gazelle there. An old age pension in return.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on this very miserable afternoon. I hope we can cheer you up over the next hour or so. My name is Clemency Byrne-Hill. I'm a journalist and presenter, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've managed to lure the busiest woman on telly up here to Sheffield. I'm sure that the lovely Sue Perkins needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever, but just in case...
I'm not Mel Giedroyc. Or a proclaimer.
We all know her, of course, as the presenter of such varied fare as the Great British Bake Off, the Culture Show, the Art on Your Walls, the World's Most Dangerous Roads, pretty much anything else you care to mention that's on telly, actually, because she is dazzlingly versatile. She is here to tell us today a bit about her life in TV, how she got where she got, the sorts of things that feed into her decision-making, the choices she makes, whether that be Elizabethan sheep's heads or Mary Berry's creme pâtissière. She's also, I hope, going to let us into the secret of how just it is possible that everything she touches pretty much turns to telly gold. Sue.
That's not true.
We all think it is. It's very lovely to see you.
It's
Thank
very
you for
lovely
being
to
here.
see you. Thank you.
Is it fair to say, though, that all of this is a bit of an accident, that you didn't
Yes.
set out to become a TV presenter?
No, I'm a sort of witless blunderer, and actually, certainly in the latter part of my career, I've been very fortunate that people much more knowledgeable than myself have gone, no, you really should do that show about cakes. It'll be all right. Because most of the things that I've gone on to do that have been well received and good, I've had the loving hand of many people around me. Not in a pervy way, although sometimes. But when I left college, obviously I met Mel when I was 18, so we had started working together. But I never, ever thought that I wanted to or would ever be able to be a TV presenter. All I knew is that I was incapable of doing any form of formal work in an office environment because my attention span is limited and I just get very distracted by things. So I did bumble, and I know it's awful and it's annoying when people talk about falling into things. I wouldn't say we fell into anything, but we were gently and slowly corralled by circumstance, by the need to pay rent, by, you know, mentors, whatever it was, to get to the point where I started working regularly on television.
Well, we're going to have a little look at Mel and Sue's early foray into television.
Oh, no!
I told Sue that maybe we wouldn't have to watch any of her clips because she hates watching herself on telly. You're allowed to do this.
No, I will, and I'll slightly rock a little bit as well, which will be fun for you to see.
It's all right. We're going to get you through it.
Yeah.
May we please see the light lunch clip?
Hello, I'm Elaine Quasada from Cheshire, and on today's Light Lunch, Major Ron in the kitchen, the hilarious cast of the Fast Show around the table, and singing will be Steve Houghton from London's Burning. Cue titles!
Welcome to Light Lunch, the show which forms a major part of a healthy television diet. Have we got a corker of a show for you today, lads?
Oh, yes, we have. Around the light lunch table are a quartet of comedy's royal family. They are heirs to the British comedy throne, are responsible for changing the way people talk to each other up and down the country.
Oh, yes.
They are the catchphrase kings and queens of the Fast Show, and we're going to be having lunch with them.
Oh, yeah. It's actually becoming hypertensive. It's interesting because when we were just kids when we did that, and it's so very, very dated. And I now recognise that sort of very fast-paced delivery of mine to be motivated by nothing but panic. So I was obviously very, very panicked when I did that. But yeah, strange circumstances led us to that show, because we'd started, our first incarnation was doing Edinburgh every year. We used to do the festival from pretty much when we first met in 88 through to sort of 95, 96. And we did sketch show comedy. So we used to gig with the likes of the League of Gentlemen and with Matt Lucas and David Williams. Whatever happened to them?
Yeah.
And we'd be sort of third on the bill, and you know, brilliant people like Stuart Lee and Richard Herring and stuff. And we piloted a couple of sketch shows, but never got anything really away. And eventually our agents were sort of, you know, you're not earning any money and blah, blah, blah. This daytime show's come up. And we said, no, this will become a characteristic theme in this conversation. Absolutely not. And we were, again, kettled into doing it. And we had no proper clothes to wear. So I looked like a sort of budgeon security guard. And we were just anarchic and couldn't quite understand what we were doing there. And eventually we sort of bullied Channel 4 into giving us the job. We were up against in the final... The sort of final pilot against Nicky Campbell, actually. So it would have been a very different, probably much more informed type of show had he gone and got the job.
And what did you learn on the show?
I learned how much fun live television could be, and the power of live is something that we might come back later to with some of the clips you're going to show, but it's always been my absolute favourite. The most important lesson I learned doing Light Lunch happened about series 4 or 5, which is that you can take your earpiece out. You don't have to be
producers
controlled.
in the room.
Yeah,
in your boots.
It's a terrible. I mean, there was a. You know, this was going back. I was 27 when I did that show. It was sort of 1997 that clip was from, and it was sort of for me the very beginnings of the worst excesses of the sort of celebrity, the obsession with celebrity, and you'd have somebody like Stephen Gately on, and in your ear would be, ask him about a girlfriend, ask him about a girlfriend, or somebody from the cast of Hollyoaks would come on, and it would be, ask about her boobs, are they real? And there was something that just sat so uncomfortably with me about all that in the middle of, I remember exactly, it was a Wednesday show, and I was just getting it in the ear. And I just thought, and you've gone. And I started to ask the questions that I really wanted to ask, which were nothing to do with people's sexual orientation or their cup size or, you know, anything to do with invading their private life. It was just about fun and owning it. And, you know, you're right to say, I'm sorry if there are any producers in the room, but it is that dance between authoring something whilst absolutely respecting the power of collaboration and respecting the fact that producers do a job that I can't even imagine. So, yeah, that was being, you know, I'm in essence a naughty person. I hope not a bad person, but a naughty one, and one who slightly resists authority, and just have the guts to go, I am not going to listen to that anymore. Because I fervently believe that there are more interesting things that the general public want to know, even at 12:30 on Channel 4 in the mid-90s.
Good on you. Do you think the ejection of the earpiece had anything to do with the show being cancelled?
It was the next day. You know,
by 12:31, it was all over.
I mean, again, you know, it actually wasn't cancelled. We left it, and that was really silly. Because I've never been able to plan my career. I never look at... To plan a career is to conceive of yourself, I think, as a third person whom you can manipulate like a sort of counter in a battleships game. I just blithely stumble from one thing to another. At that moment, I just thought, we'll be fine. We're a bit bored of this. We'll be fine. And we said, we don't want to do it anymore. And we'd had a slightly unsuccessful incarnation later on in the evening. It hadn't really worked. And we said, no, we're done now. And then I didn't work for 7 years.
How did that feel?
It felt painful. It's painful because you're lying if, particularly in this job, it isn't, your ideas of self-worth aren't connected to how much you're used. And it was stupid because we had nothing else. To say nothing
of paying your rent.
Oh, that collapsed. I mean, literally, it's extraordinary. I mean, I had built a house of cards, really. I just sort of thought, I don't think I've ever earned actually as well as as I did then. I was a kid, and I went from being on the dole and doing occasional bits of, you know, charity work or copywriting or whatever, or teaching, to earning a lot of money, which I didn't know how to handle, and then having nothing again. And it was a very, very important life lesson. But yeah, I spent the next 7 years working a lot in radio, which I still do to this day, and People who listen to Just a Minute know there's not a lot of cash in it, I imagine, but I will do it till the day I die if they ask me, because radio has always been there, and it's, you know, people keep on listening and I'll keep on doing it. But yeah, it was a very difficult time because, you know, the rest of my friends who weren't in television were just at the beginning of their 30s just starting to find their feet, and I had completely lost mine.
So what did you do? Did you hold tight to what you really felt was important and the sort of work you wanted to be doing, or would you have taken anything that came along?
Oh no, I would have taken anything, and it's really important to be honest about that, because you know when you lose your house, which I did, when you're not working, you don't have the luxury of time, and you don't have the luxury of choice, and so I was lucky around about 7 years after I sort of stagnated. I was lucky enough to. I started thinking, what can I do? And I started touring stand-up, and I'm actually not a very good stand-up at all. It is in my nature to want to collaborate. It doesn't have to be in a double act, but it does have to be, as we're all doing. The audience is part of that collaboration. And stand-up for me, I couldn't quite get to the audience the way I wanted. It felt like a lecture. But I did stand up, and I toured in an effort to sort of get myself back. And it was then that the agent I'm now with said, you don't know me from Adam, but you don't work enough. And she said, what do you want to do? Do you want to, what's your plan? And I sort of said, well, I just want to be happy in television. I want to do things that are interesting. And she said, and that's great. For the first 3 years, we pay your mortgage. And I will always remember that, because there's a sort of earthy pragmatism to her that saved my bacon.
Wonderful. There were a few twists and turns along the way then.
There are,
but cut to 2008, I think, an unlikely offer came in about a show that would teach some unsuspecting celebrities how to conduct a symphony orchestra. Not very likely.
No.
Let's see the first Maestro clip, if we can.
The real battle for me is going to be to take it seriously. I think when I get nervous and when I feel a bit embarrassed and a bit coy, I ham it up, and I will try and showboat and be sarcastic or ironic or stupid and cretinous or willfully ignorant or all of the above. Very nervous. This may well be the brown Danube by the time we finish. Let's give it a go. Okay, here we go. And if I look like a buffoon as I'm transported by a piece of music, then so be it. I don't care. It'd be nice to know how to break out of this is how you beat time, which everyone can do. I mean, as long as you can move your hand up and down, you can sort of beat time. How you move beyond that to getting that bloke over there and that woman over there to just use their knowledge to create something mercurial and brilliant. That would be very exciting.
Any interest in conducting symphony orchestras before the offer to do Maestro came along?
No, because I'd never conceived that was something that was possible for somebody like me or even a woman. I mean, I'd never met a female conductor, maestro, ever in my life, or seen one. I again turned this down 4 times not because I didn't think it'd be great, but because I was so nervous and I was so not match fit. And if you don't work, your confidence, and mine is never high, but it dips and it dips and it dips. And I just thought, I'm going to fail. And, you know, I was pretty self-limiting in the way I approached it. And eventually I said, yes, let's go for it. What's amazing about this programme, and it's a programme like nothing else I've ever done, is the amount of time that was given, the amount of study we were allowed to do, the fact that a lot of those shows were live. And at the beginning there, they said, you have a small amount of musical knowledge, you can read a score, open that door and do it. So I had never had a conducting lesson. They just wanted to see. And it's that rough-edged, throw everything at the wall and see what happens approach to that show that I think makes it, you know, I'm not talking about my performance in it, I'm thinking as a concept, so standalone. It was absolutely an extraordinary thing for me to do because, I mean, I don't know how much you want to be bored by it, but on every level, I totally changed as a person. It taught me how to communicate without language. It taught me, I'm somebody who's always been very shy, which may seem sort of antithetical, but, you know, always had a problem sort of really looking at people because they'll look back. And that's all you do in an orchestra. You have to stand there and you have to look at someone with the intensity that you'd look at a lover, because you want them to do something for you. You want them to play the oboe or play the cello or whatever it is. And I was totally freed from so many preconceptions about myself and about my work, and it was a ride. I absolutely loved it. And to study properly as well. You know, I went to college, like probably a lot of people here when I was 18. I learnt nothing because I was, you know, willfully stupid and I wanted to drink. When I approached this at however old I was, 30-something, I was ready to study, and I went to Greenwich College every day. It was miles away from where I live, and I got at this big dusty score, and I looked. And the great thing about music, above and beyond the sort of heart that in your chest exploding, is the fact that it's multidisciplinary and it's about making choices, you know, vertical and horizontal and intellectual and emotional choices second by second. And it was mind-blowing. If you ever get a chance to be in an orchestra or stand in front of one or just go to more gigs, it's life-changing.
That is music to my ears. Well, obviously the study sessions in the library paid off, because let's take a look at the second Maestro clip, please.
Okay, here we go.
If I look like a buffoon as I'm transported by this music, then so be it. I don't care. It'd be nice to know how to break out of the this is how you beat time. If everyone can do it, you can move your hand up and down. You move beyond that to getting that bloke over there and that one over there to just use their knowledge.
You all know what happened. Sue went on to win the show. How did that feel?
Again, it sort of reminded me of something else that I do quite a lot in television, which is to, I have these extraordinary experiences, mind-altering experiences, and because I'm on television, and I have to present those experiences to the general public, I can't always feel them. And so I went through and I conducted live Beethoven's Fifth, and this is another great thing about the show, is they let two people conduct the same piece of music live, one after the other, to show you what a conductor does, to show you that we'd set slightly different tempos, there'd be slightly different intonations and slightly different sort of emphasis on certain parts, just to prove the point. So they spent 15 minutes of live television in a loop, to, you know, repeating the same thing twice. But when I won, obviously it was a big adrenaline thing, and my mentor was so happy, and I felt happy, but I was still called upon to do pieces to camera, and how do you feel, and how do you feel about being asked how you feel. It was only when I looked up to the gods and I saw my partner, who's a stoic sausage at best, and just crying, that I just totally lost it, because I realised, like, this is a massive thing. This is a massive thing. You know, it's been like 6 months of my life, and you know, and start to inhabit it as a not just as a presenter, but as a human being, and feel the joy of it. And then I went on to have the joy of conducting at the last night of the proms, and from then the Royal Albert Hall, and the joy is unimaginable.
And does it make, I mean, you mentioned female conductors. They should have really renamed the show Maestra instead of keeping it as Maestro, in your honour. I mean, does it make you feel ambitious for what arts programmes, music television can do? Because particularly when it comes to classical music, there's so little of it in the mainstream. People feel automatically like it's something that's perhaps not for them. How important is a show like this for breaking down those supposed barriers? I
think it's vital, because you can put strands of culture that are seen as, you know, removed, or, you know, too sort of academic or frightening or posh, or whatever moniker you want to put to it. You can so happily put them into a populist TV format, and to unpick from that so that everyone understands the real magic of it. And, you know, I'm not a trained musician, but that experience was as much for me as it is for you, as it is for everybody. Everybody has the tools to enjoy sound. But unfortunately, through years, and we haven't got time to discuss it now, but, you know, my bugbear is that they're these artificial positions, and perhaps TV presenter is also one of them, where there are arbiters of taste. So someone will tell you how to feel about a piece of music, a curator will show you what you should feel about art. And actually, I think what television can do is strip away that middle person and give you a more direct connection with something that's supposed to be a profound, emotional experience. And that's what I felt about Maestro, and all credit to the people who did that programme, because they made something magical, I think.
Personally then, a huge journey. What about professionally? Did the calls start flooding in after that?
Well, I'd moved to Cornwall. I was a sort of technically half a farmer by that point. And because I have a very limited attention span, I was sort of half a farmer and also half planning to work in Western herbal medicine, which I'd applied to do a degree in. And then the phone started ringing, and so I started commuting to London and left my vegetable patch and my far too many animals. And my life has been sort of full of people who've been very, very good to me, and probably I should name check them. I don't know if it's relevant, but somebody called Daisy Goodwin then rung me up, and I'd met Daisy. I don't know if it's the next clip or if I'm cueing you too quickly, but anyway, she said, come and do a show with Giles Coren called Supersizers. We don't know what it is yet, but you'll have to wear a corset. And she had me at corset. If I'd known there was alcohol in corset, I'd have run to London barefoot.
Let's take a look at Supersizers.
My name's Giles Coren. I'm a writer, restaurant critic, and general fatso. I'm being joined by Sue Perkins, writer, broadcaster, and lovely slim person. Over the coming weeks, we'll be gobbling our way through the diets of 6 periods in British history. Each week, we'll be medically tested, dress the part, and then trough our way through the breakfasts and banquets of Britain's glorious culinary past.
Jelly and ice cream.
Our gastronomic adventure this week will take us back to England in the 1590s, the age of Shakespeare, a time of exploration and discovery, and our diet is certainly going to be adventurous. As we snack on sheep's heads,
Look at the little thing.
hope not to get a frog in our throats,
Oh, God!
and enjoy a nice piece of cod.
Look at that. Look at that. It's a pincushion, isn't it, basically? That is all sound and fury signifying nothing.
Yes,
on
they
mead or
probably,
ale.
they probably can't show half of what happened. I don't know if anyone saw that show, but it was 5,000 years of me getting battered. Absolutely battered out of my mind. And what was great about this show is that it was entirely improvised. So it had that sort of as-live feel. You had notes for the day, so you knew, today we're going to talk, you know, say we were doing the 1950s. That day we maybe be talking about how the fridge arrived, or the Ideal Home exhibition, or the Queen's coronation and coronation chicken. But you'd get your notes, and you'd get the sort of headlines you needed to get across to everybody, and then you'd go in and you'd start eating and drinking in period. And there was no sanitised water until I don't know when, but certainly the late 18th century, I think. So it was just beer. You'd wake up at 6 o'clock, go to work and drink beer. And then after the beer, you'd drink a bottle of sherry. And after the sherry, you'd drink maybe three bottles of champagne, which is what I did when I was Marie Antoinette. And I did a piece to camera with this enormous periwig on. And I tried to talk in a sort of cogent way about how women would have hat boxes and go to sleep in them. And the next thing I remember is the back of my head thudding downstairs as I've been dragged out by my feet out of a chateau because we'd outstayed our welcome. So we did really properly live the experience and behaved rather poorly along the way. A lot of ending up under tables, particularly in the Victorian era. A lot of collapsing and... But we did really understand the sort of... Again, a fantastic idea, and credit to the people that commissioned it at BBC Two. It was to get a sense of history through the palette is brilliant.
Absolutely. And you had a wonderful cohort with Giles.
I certainly did, yeah.
And we've seen that dynamic with you and Mel now. We've seen it with you and Giles. How important is it for you to have a sort of wingman along the way? Very.
As I say, it doesn't have to be as formalised as a double act partner. It can be, you know, the audience. It can be, you know, a collaborator, or it can be music. It has to be, but I have to feel I'm doing something in relation to something else. But also, it's more interesting that way. Just a person delivering dry facts without context or without anybody to counterpoint it. You need something against, you know, to kick against. Otherwise, for me, it's simply not watchable. And the great thing about double acts is they can, you know, when you're rubbish, they can be brilliant. And you can go, good for you. I had no idea what to say then, and you just said it.
Style-wise, it was very immersive. There wasn't much sort of down-the-barrel presenter-ishness.
No.
Does that appeal to you naturally as a presenter?
Yeah, again, because of the sort of attention span issues that I have. You know, I'm not somebody, you know, who can walk down endless corridors of stately home going in. It was in 1475 that the hammer was first invented, and from then on, you know, the nail. Because there are people that just do it a lot better. Because what my inclination would be in oh, look, a thing. And then I'm just off looking at a painting or a bit of dirt on the floor. And I was always a terrible irritation to my family and all my teachers. But there's a sort of curiosity that outweighs formality for me. And so I'm sure that makes me sometimes irritating to work with. But the immersive, extemporaneous nature is something that really excites me, because I can't tell you how awful it is to feel constrained. And that's why I hark back to that popping the earpiece thing out in Light Lunch. If you're on the ground, you sort of, I'm just an audience member. I just happen to have been moved in front of a television camera. You know, but essentially I have the same questions as everybody else. And if I'm feeling they're not being asked, or if I'm being asked to ask something that I don't think is true, it's irritating. So when you're just free form, you can just respond to things in the moment, and you can get, I think, a lot better television. Unless you're in Supersizers, in which case all you get is a couple of drunk people under a table in a periwig crying.
Very charming drunk people in periwigs crying, though. So you're firmly established by this stage on our screens. We know that you're witty, immersive, you've got all of that curiosity, you've got that uncanny ability to draw an audience into whatever you want to talk about, whatever we're looking at. But you even then don't stay still. You then make a foray into a whole different part of the arts altogether. And if we can show the culture show clip, that would be marvellous. Thank you very much.
Who knows?
Finally had her family Christmases too. She married a vicar and, as Mrs. Robinson, had 2 children. Catherine never...
I decided to do this interview in a dissection room in honour of the time I think you spent in a mortuary. Was there a reason, or was it just...
I was living in New York, and a magazine called, and they asked me if I wanted to write for them. And they said I could do whatever I wanted. And I always wanted to see a lot of dead people, but you can't just walk in. But
No.
this magazine could get me in.
I guess the most famous job we know you had was you started off as a department store elf. I can see that.
I'm small, and I'm merry. So they hired me.
Small and merry is they're the 2 CV points that you'd look for in an elf. Almost exclusively, you'd think.
Exactly.
We'll
That's
wear
all
a hat.
you need.
We'll wear a jangly hat with a bell on it.
Well, I had an outfit, and I did it for 2 years.
Was this financial necessity? Was a part of you just thought, I'm home now? I'm with my I'm with my people. I'm going to stay in Elfland forever.
So a completely different skill altogether, a sit-down interview with a figure, a literary genius like David Sedaris. Did that faze you?
I love David Sedaris. So there is, I mean, the culture show has afforded me, as you know, and it's afforded us, you know, opportunities that you'd never normally have. You know, I've met some absolutely extraordinary people. And I sat and had 2 hours with Philip Glass, which blew my mind, you know, minimalist sort of whiz kid, but also the father of dance music, and so much more besides. David Sedaris, I think, is one of the greatest humorists, and I don't know, I'm sort of I suppose that what that clip shows is that I'm sort of a chameleon in some ways. I take on the energy. If you notice, my energy in that is quite different. And maybe it's a life of not really knowing who I am. I tend to sort of, I will just fit very happily into other people's slipstream. But the tempo of my, you know, my conversation is so much slower. But I just was intrigued by him and slightly in love with him. And he's got such an inquiring mind, and everything is fit for a story. That's what I love about David Sedaris, is he could walk down a rainy Sheffield street and something would entertain and amuse him. And he's endlessly optimistic. And because that's what storytellers are. They're always full of the joys of life. And I really enjoyed doing that, a long form kind of conversation. I don't see them as interviews. I do see them as conversations, because I think if you approach it as, you know, I know stuff about you and I'm going to get it out of you, it creates a very artificial dynamic. As you know, the thing you've got to do is just allow people to tell the stories they want, and you should be flexible enough. I mean, I can't, like, you have barely referred to your cards, which is, you know, testament. I mean, I'm the same thing. It's like, you're going to want to flow. You're going to want to let somebody express themselves. And if you don't, if you sort of curtail that in some way, you're just, I think, not sort of doing your job.
Is there anything that you're not interested in?
No, actually. I think that's an excellent... No, fundamentally, I'm interested in everything until it's proven to be...
Till the attention span goes.
Yeah.
Another thing.
But then I sound fickle, and I hope I'm not. I mean, there's some things which permanently hold my attention, and then there are some areas of life which, if they're mentioned, they forensically I'm drawn to. But I think everything is of worth. Yeah. And I feel that that's why I love television. I think intense and weird and difficult things can be democratized and explored, and I think the battle for me is, you know, because my family I was the first person in my family to go to college, and there was such emphasis placed on education as a way of bringing yourself out of circumstance, that I spent the most unsuccessful, I mean, I may still have a hugely unsuccessful period to come, but the most unsuccessful period so far in my presenter career was when I was obsessed with being clever. And that is the worst thing you can do as a presenter, because it's not your job to be clever, it's the other brilliant people's job to be clever. It's your job to be inquiring. And it was such a massive relief to stop pretending to know everything.
How did that revelation come?
It came a bit through Maestro. It came through some of my more foreign travels. It's come because that's when it's so obvious that you know nothing. When you meet another culture face on, I mean, I'm so comforted now by my idiocy, I can't tell you. You know, what was such a source of stress before is now so reassuring, because it just means if you acknowledge you haven't got it all yet, then you accept the fact that you can learn, and then you're open to learning, and that's what's brilliant, I think.
Would it be possible to go back to the Mrs. Dickens clip, though? Because I'm interested, because suddenly...
Anything could happen now.
Suddenly you are...
We could be watching Jeremy Kyle for half an hour.
Suddenly, though, you are in what we would call an expert authoring role as a presenter, rather than that, you know, what you've just described, the sort of more inquiring, curious. You're there as our expert voice on Mrs. Dickens. Can we have a look at that?
Finally had her family Christmases too. She married a vicar, and as Mrs. Robinson, had 2 children. Catherine never remarried. Charles had burnt her letters to him, but on her deathbed in 1879, she left the British Museum his letters to her. That the world may know, she said, he once loved me. She inhabited 2 completely different Christmases. Firstly, the technicolor morality play of The Christmas Carol with its plum puddings and goodwill amongst men and turkey dinners. But she also experienced a much more modern Christmas, one that's certainly familiar to me, full of family bitterness and recrimination, of cold shoulders, silence and awkwardness. But the sad and bitter irony for her was that it could be said that both of those experiences were authored by her husband, Charles Dickens.
It's a completely different tone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Dickens expert, as the myriad Dickens societies around the country were very keen to point out on Twitter. When those groups sort of get into social media, you're in real trouble, because they can hunt you down anywhere. What I particularly responded to, and Janice Hadlow at BBC, and Emma Willis, who's here also, who've both been very instrumental in my career, asked me to do this. And I've studied English literature, but I'm not an expert. But what I liked about that project and what drew me to it was the fact that we were taking one of the most famous characters in British history and just slightly skewing it, just slightly turning it on its head to look at the way he behaved domestically, and to look at not the dark side. This is not. It wasn't a sort of, you know, it wasn't a late night sort of shocker doc, but just to sort of open him up a little bit. He was the most extraordinary. He was the first celebrity, the first global celebrity, and the first, you know, sort of self-spin doctor, I suppose. He created this mythology almost instantly about himself, and in private he was monstrous. And I sort of was, I mean, those pieces to camera, you have to have a degree of authority, but actually a lot of the documentary was just me going to the library and looking at these letters. And you think of Bleak House and these huge, great, vast tomes he wrote. He's got love letters in which he calls her little piglet, and he signs kisses and then goes, times 3 million. Like we all have done, like I still do, you know, like if I'm going away, I'll leave a note on my partner's pillow. Like he's just a human being, and he makes terrible, awful mistakes like we've all made. And that's why that documentary really appealed to me, because I was bored by just this constant sort of sight of him as a sort of great Victorian, and I wanted to know something more. I wanted to have his life fleshed out, and that's when the hate mail came.
Well, we'll move on from hate mail because most of the country by this stage loves you and you're working constantly.
I can list quite a few people, mainly working in the tabloid industry who don't, but that's very sweet of you.
A lot of people love you, everyone watching telly loves you, and at this point Channel 4 come calling, as I understand. Suddenly they want you back again. And there's a big decision to be made about which direction you go, where your sort of televisual home is going to be.
I mean, obviously I can work anywhere, and if people would like me to do things, but it's a sense of, yes, I was asked to do something, and it was live, so that was interesting. It wasn't necessarily a strand of documentary I was particularly drawn to, but, you know, sometimes money is very compelling, and then you have to sit down and you have to have a conversation with yourself, and you have to look at the people that have nurtured you. And I've subsequently gone on and I've worked for More 4 and things, and I've done some really interesting things with lots of different channels. But I had a serious, I felt, sort of debt of honour to be repaid to those people that had faith in me when I simply couldn't get arrested. And it's not just about honour and it's not just about gratitude, because our business doesn't really run on gratitude very effectively.
Really?
But it's fueled mainly by bitterness, I think. And it was about something more than that. It was about looking at the opportunities I'd been given and going, this is the place where I can do these extraordinary things. These are the people that have allowed me to conduct at the Royal Albert Hall, who've allowed me to get drunk under tables and corsets, who've allowed me to talk about Dickens and interview public about what they love about the art that's in their living room and the books on their shelves and all these amazing
people complain
things.
about the BBC. I mean,
I can't bear it.
Outrage.
Because if you want to complain about the BBC, there are better ways to complain about it. This is the thing. I think, you know, you can complain about every vast corporation, but I just think the ways possibly that you know, the things that are being levelled are not the right, you know, lines of slander. And it makes me sad, because in television, genuinely, people are just trying to do a really good job. They're not trying to misspend money or they're not trying to do anything bad. They're just trying to do things that are good. I don't want to get too political, because probably I'll be misquoted and I hate myself. But, you know, I feel that very clearly about the people I work with, that they are very genuinely trying to tell interesting stories that impact the lives of as big a demographic of licence fee payers as they can. Genuinely. You know, and I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm not linked in a handcuffs deal to anybody. It's just what I feel, you know, and I'm delighted that I get to work with those people, genuinely.
So you make the decision to stay with the BBC, and someone comes to you and says, we want you to do the show about pastry. And you think, maybe what have I done?
Get out of town. I think I've made a terrible mistake. Why am I here?
Why am I here
when
with
I'm
these
just,
idiots?
and this was, you know, and lots of people told me to do this. I turned it down and said, Cakes, are you out of your mind? It's never going to work and nobody's going to watch it. And I had Janice, who was the then head of BBC Two, and I had Charlotte Moore and Emma Willis saying, you're an idiot, it'll be great. And I think 4 or 5 times it got turned down, and then I did it. And it was, of course, an added bonus that I got to do it with Mel. Mary Berry I'd met several times on Supersizers, who is as beautiful a human being as you'd ever conceive of. And Paul, interestingly, I sort of had a slight role in his casting, and I'd seen him do a bakery slot on a Back and Beyond kind of live food show on the cable networks. And I remembered his name, why wouldn't you, and those laser eyes. And yeah, and then we were sort of chorus and off we popped, and what's happened since then is it's silly. It's beautiful and silly.
Should we have a look at the beautiful silliness that is Bake Off?
With Suet's success all round, spirits in the tent are high. So it's time to bring them back down to earth with a bump.
Bakers, time for
the technical challenge. Now, this recipe today is one of old laser eyes herself, Mary Berry's. Look at them. Just boring terrified. I can't look at her. So, Mary, Paul, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Off they go to the love dungeon there. Off we go. So you tip him upside down and check he's not got a soggy bottom.
There we go. Paul and Mary would like you, please, to make 8 religieuses, which means nun in French. 8 little nuns, French classic, made from choux pastry. They should be filled with crème pâtissière, smothered in chocolate ganache, and piped with whipped cream. You've got 2 hours to bake and present your religieuses.
I've never eaten a nun before. On your marks.
Get set.
Oh dear. Where was that? 8 o'clock, BBC Two? Yeah. Cosy family show.
Cosy family show. You've been very sceptical about why anyone would want to watch a show about baking.
Well, I sort of was at the time, and now I completely get why you'd want to watch a show about baking. You know, we are presented almost daily with a raft of shows where people want to be famous. This is, in essence, a reality show, but people don't want to be famous. They want to be great bakers. I can't tell you how exciting that is. We're filming currently at the moment, and I walked in on somebody just as their caramel was about to go over. And I walked in and went, hello. She went, go away! And I went, goodbye. And off I went. You know, and whether they use it or not, I don't know. But they don't, you know, in any other sort of reality show, they'd be like, don't care about the caramel, it's showtime. And it's that attention to detail and the obsession with craft that I think is so magnificent. And it has, the success of the show has very little to do with any of the 4 people that are fronting it, in my opinion. As masterful as Mel and Mary.
That's just because you're ludicrously modest. I'm sure
no,
everyone...
I just think it's actually, it's a lot of things, but it is the bakers. And it's also the way it's shot. It's the fact they get those little eye rolls and, you know, kind of, oh God, I've had enough of this. And, you know, there's the sort of tension in Ruby's face, or, you know, the kind of... but it's the music as well. I need to give a shout out to the guy who does the music, right? This is a great piece of composition. So I'd like to give him his props, actually, because it's good. But ultimately, somebody came up to me the other day, tell me if we're running out of time, but she said, I just want to thank you because my kids, who are 13 and 15, are starting to get into drugs. And I didn't know where the conversation was going to go. And I said, oh, OK. You do know I'm not a qualified drug and alcohol counsellor, particularly with my track record on television. Well, I've sort of, you know, half taken laudanum and collapsed under a sort of medieval banqueting table. But she said they had never sat down and watched television, but slowly they started to watch Bake Off. And now, instead of going out, I can't say that they don't drink or take drugs, but she did say to me that instead of going out on the tiles, they watch the show on a Saturday morning, and they spend the whole of the weekend. They make 3 of the bakes together.
And now they've got an obesity problem as well.
And now I'm responsible for diabetes. And, but, you know, that sort of does... That sounds cheesy now I've said it, but it is... when it catches you unawares, as it did, it was sort of really late night, and we've been sort of drinking. There's loads of people there, and she just came up to me at the end of the night. I feel really glad, because that's the experience I had. My first visceral experiences were dipping my finger in a sort of bowl of, you know, cake mix and, you know, making little fairy cakes. And it reminds me of my mum. I mean, what you can never see, but I feel so clearly is the connection I have always with the sort of 60-something, 70-something woman in it. Because every single one of those is my mother. Every single one. My mum's still living, by the way, and she's an extraordinary bird who'll probably go on forever. But, you know, I could cry when I think about it, because that's what it means to me. It's like that. You know, I can name them all and I could tell you everything they've baked because I just make a beeline for them, because it's like my family but on television, and it's a really special, lovely thing, that. So I can't take any credit, because, as I say, with everything else that ever went well in this haphazard roll of the dice in my career, it was other people making me do it, not my own kind of self-possession.
To what extent, though, did you think, OK, I've had enough of sugar and flour and butter, now I want to go to Alaska and drive on the world's most dangerous road? Because even for you, as career progressions go, this one was bonkers.
Yes, it was bonkers. At the time, and I said yes immediately to it, and then thought, as I approached the Dalton Highway, north of Fairbanks, are they trying to kill me? Is this their way of saying we've had enough?
I heard actually it was commissioned by the Dickens Society.
Yeah, right.
So let's take a look at the world's most dangerous road.
Get the diffs on radio. This is northbound four-wheeler. We are stuck in a drift approaching mile 68. I repeat, this is a northbound four-wheeler approaching mile 68 in a drift. We have zero visibility, calling all southbound trucks to get on the radio and let us know if you're coming down. Completely innocent. You're perilously close this side. That's it, you're getting there. This is northbound four-wheeler approaching mile 68. We have zero visibility on the pass. We are mid-drift. This is calling out to all southbounders. You can hear us. Let us know where you are, as we are down to zero delineators visibility. Okay. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, this is bad.
It really is bad. There's zero visibility. Reacting to so many stimuli. It's the wind, it's the snow drifts, then it's ice, then it's oncoming trucks, the lights changing.
This is bad.
Just to advise, there are big drifts at 64 and 68.
68 is let's just calm it down.
This is northbound four-wheeler, just hitting mile 353. Just wondering if there's any southbound guys out there we need to keep clear of.
See, I thought you were going to kick off down the radio at that point for the patronising. You're doing pretty good there, little lady. But actually, you were rather grateful for the disembodied voice coming out of the darkness.
Yeah, it was. We're all sort of everybody now is so sort of television savvy that I suspect people think probably that was set up or. I still laugh because the programme I agreed to do was called the World's Most Interesting Roads, and they changed it. I'm not even joking. That is absolutely, it was the world's most interesting roads, and almost midway on the Dalton highway, it was the world's most dangerous roads. Like, what the hell is going on? It was not literally midway, but it sort of went through a lot of incarnations, I think, wanting to talk about trade routes and all the rest of it. Anyway, we were seriously in trouble then, and we'd made a mistake. And the delineators show you, usually you should see, they're sort of every couple of metres, you should be able to see sort of maybe 60 of them. We couldn't see one, and the reason we're calling out is because it's, as you can see, sheet ice. The road is basically flooded at the beginning of the winter, and it freezes over. And there are these sort of black fingers of ice that if you touch, that you just go off the edge. So there was a huge, great drop there. And weirdly, that was in a place called Shit Creek. And it was named Shit Creek because 18 people had died there, and it was really very dangerous. And because the huge ice trucks drive down, they drove down the middle of the road, we would have just been killed instantly. So you are constantly on the intercom. And Charlie and I, it's fair to say, he's such a nice man. It was interesting because you have to form a double act in a car, and we weren't the best of double acts. We were sort of chalk and cheese. But in that moment, you know, I think we sort of we got there with one another, because I'm really quite bad at driving, and he was rubbish on the CB radio. But yeah, a guy turned up, and he did save our life, although weirdly, because it's television, he turned out to be the star of Ice Road Truckers. So it was like television is now eating itself. 5 minutes.
Ooh, in that case, we're going to move on quite quickly to your next project, which, is it fair to say that this is pretty much the biggest thing you've done yet? It's called Mekong, and it's taken 6 months of your life, I believe?
This is by far and away the biggest thing I've ever done, and genuinely life-changing. So this is a 4-part documentary that's being aired on BBC Two, I think in the autumn. And this is going up the Mekong River from the Ho Chi Minh Delta in Vietnam up to the Tibetan Plateau. And it's, again, the sort of theme being people, I suppose, and just opening yourself up to new experiences. You know, I was in tiny settlements with ethnic minorities who spoke, who were members of the Krung tribe, who's only 120 people are in the Krung tribe. So you'd have a translator to translate from Krung to Hmong to Khmer, and from Khmer to English. And so answers were taking so long to come back that you just stop and you start communicating in an entirely non-verbal way. And some extraordinary things happen. I had experiences that were totally transcending, and it's sort of an Englishwoman abroad, but it's also a look at not just a look forward to what's happening in Asia with the vast changes there, but a look back at what we did. And I think you have to be very mindful when you look at developing countries. You have to be very mindful that you were part of an oppressive colonising force that has rampaged its way around history. And when you look at people killing a bear pretty much in front of you, it's very painful and difficult, but we killed all our bears in the medieval period and we chopped down all of our forests. And so it, for me, has been the most overwhelming political, sociological, emotional thing I could have possibly done. And I hope I've done just even a percentile of those brilliant people justice. And I advise travel. I left it too late in my life, and I hope to do more now, but extraordinary, particularly the Tibetan Plateau. Mind-bending.
We're going to see a very short clip in which you meet a hermit, a rather well-connected hermit, as it turns out.
Oh, beautiful. Look at this. Is that your phone going? Is this you? Look at you, you're so... That is marvellous. So basically I've come here and I've been shown a picture when this... Yeah, we are married now. When this mega dude had this hair, this great Jimi Hendrix hair, he's now got it as a hairpiece.
I think that's a marvellous note on which to end. We have got some roving mics, so if you stick your hand up if you've got a question for Sue, do so now, and if not, I'm going to keep nattering to her. There's a question here in the front.
I wanted to ask about, I really enjoyed the World's Most Dangerous Roads that you did, as well as everything else I found you in. And I thought the one with Lisa Tarbuck was so amazing. Like, it made me want to just be in the back of the car with you, because it just looked like hilarious fun.
It was hilarious fun. We sung pretty much every Diana Ross classic in very close harmony for 3 weeks. We got to, you know, we were friends anyway, but yeah, that's extraordinary. And something happened on that trip that was very memorable, in that I remember, it's the first time I'd really properly travelled in Asia, and we did the Ho Chi Minh trail through Vietnam and Laos, and we got out the car and spoke to two girls who were collecting, or mother and daughter actually, who were collecting shrapnel, because obviously Laos is the most heavily bombed country in the world. I think it's something like 38 times the number of bombs dropped in the totality of World War II were dropped on a country that wasn't even at war with anybody. So they pick up all the bits of metal and stuff, and we asked how old she was, and she didn't understand the question, so we got it rephrased through the translator, and she said, I have no idea. And then you realise you are dealing with people for whom birthdays, age is irrelevant. And that totally, you then have to start asking completely different questions. So everything that happens like that, you can either take as, oh, I feel awkward, or you can just go, I embrace my idiot. Again, I embrace how stupid I am to ask that question. I'm now on a, you know, let me elevate my thinking so that I can come some way close to where you are. So it was a great, yeah, I mean, it has made me become fairly involved with what's going on in Laos. We do a very beautiful country again. I went through it again for the Mekong thing, and travel, but travel lightly, I'd say. It's amazing people. Great.
Do we have any more questions? One over here. Oh, are we totally out of time?
Oh, we're done? No.
Oh,
I'm
so sorry. I thought we still had a minute to go.
Maybe ask me back next time, and then I don't know, I'll interview you, because you're extraordinary. So, round of applause, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of DocFest.